Day 2 of the Nature Journaling Conference is not even completely over yet, but I need to start the recap now so I can get to bed a little bit before 11 o'clock tonight so I can wake up tomorrow morning and start all over again at 8 a.m. And guess what the first thing is in the morning? First thing at 8 a.m. in the morning, you get to wake up and drink coffee while John Muir Laws shares a morning poem and some inspiration first thing. That is if you are in the Pacific time zone. If you're not in the Pacific time zone, I don't even know what time of day that will be, but that's how the day starts. And today was day 2 of the Wild Wonder Nature Journaling Conference. Right now on the Nature Journal Show, I'm going to give you a little bit of a recap of today for those of you who couldn't make it to the conference or who just got done at the conference and want a little of the stuff that you missed. I made it to most of the classes today, so I'm going to put it onto my document camera and use my nature journal and my sketch notes to show you what happened, what you missed, or what else you can see. So let me just change my camera here real quick. Oh, Heather is on here. Hi, Heather. So here is my journal from today. I wrapped up yesterday with some really cool stuff from the keynote, and then I was in the conversation. There's a backstage conversation after the keynote that is really fun, and I was there last night until the last minute. But tonight I wanted to switch over and make this video a little bit earlier. So this morning, Jack gave us the Nature Journaling Challenge, and it was all about the similarity between attention and love. In Jack's opinion, the definition of love is sustained attention over time. And so he tells us that when we look at something in nature, when we nature journal it and we look at it for a long time, that we can fall in love with that thing. And that is how we fall in love with nature, through that sustained attention. And he gave us this little quote, this short poem by Mary Oliver that goes like this: pay attention, be astonished, tell about it. This is a great thing to write in the front of your nature journal. You can see I haven't completely finished my sketch notes here, but this class was amazing and so inspiring. I really hope that this is something that is going to catch on more and more. But Karen Romano Young is telling science stories visually. And you can see that I'm still working on adding, the last bits of color to this here. Sketchnoting while people are talking at a conference can be kind of hard. A lot of times things are happening fast. But she is an amazing educator. She has a writing background and she's done a lot of children's books. And she sort of accidentally got into this place where she was doing science comics and nobody else was doing them. And one of the things that she mentioned is that she feels at home in ocean science laboratories and in publishing houses, and that she's found a way to sort of combine those two. Some of her books include, she's also written some novels for kids, and one of her goals is trying to develop science identity in kids. Some of her books include Try This, which are books full of experiments. You can see I used this color right here to remind me that I want to buy these. She has another book called Bug Science and another book called Shark Quest, which is more of her recent ones. Doodle Bug is another one that she did that is sort of like just a doodled graphic novel, basically. In 2010, she went on this icebreaker ship on a NASA Arctic trip, and she was blogging there, and that's when she realized that drawing and doodling could be sort of a niche for her. And she recommended that we try to draw something we didn't really understand, so I drew my microphone here while she was talking, and she said that when you draw something you don't understand, it really forces you to look at it in a new way, and that being a non-expert explaining complicated things to other non-experts is sort of her niche. She saw walruses on that trip and that changed her life. And since then, she's been trying to figure out how to turn important science concepts about these walruses, for example, into comics. And she made a comic about this that she shared, and she shared that it was the drawings were really bad, the paper and the pens were really bad. She used a highlighter, I believe, a highlighter and a ballpoint pen, but even so, it got a lot of attention because it was communicating information in a new and useful way. Since then, she's been doing science comics a lot more, and she went to Antarctica where she did science comics down there, and it was just really inspiring to hear her talk and see the work that she's doing. I recommend you search for her online. I don't have any links with me right now. I interviewed her in the past, and I'll probably interview her again, but her name is Karen Romano Young, and she does an amazing comic all about the Antarctic, in addition to other stuff, and she has several books. So definitely check her out. Shortly after that, yeah, pretty much right after that, I had a quick snack, but then it was time for this Death Valley geology nature journaling class. And you can see I'm falling behind with this sort of outlining, maybe using this really pale pen for my titles, and then outlining was not the best idea because I'm not having enough time to go back and do this. But this was a really awesome class, and I'm hoping to bring Ryan Pedersen on the Nature Journal show sometime soon. He is a geologist at Stanford University, where he is the director of field studies for the geology department. And he's been doing these amazing virtual geology tours to Death Valley, among other places, ever since COVID. And I would love to do a show with him on the Nature Journal show. This is supposed to look like California right here. Forgive me, I was trying to draw this map and draw this landscape while he was talking, as well as drawing him. He's much more handsome than that, I would say. Today it's 109 degrees Fahrenheit in Death Valley, and he definitely tried to make it feel like you were on a real field trip with him. Here you can see I tried nature journaling as he explained geology, and he simplified it in some ways and showed us great images. And we could follow along, and this virtual field trip was really cool to Death Valley. So just trying to draw in some of these geologic features and formations from what you can see in the landscape. He's only been nature journaling for about 3 years, but now he incorporates it into his field work all the time and thinks it's really important for geology. Part of the reason why I think this is awesome is because a lot of times nature journalers are just focusing on biotic. So a lot of people think that nature is the living things, just the living things people focus on. So those are the biotic things, but there's also abiotic nature. The way that sound moves, the way that water works, the way that wind works, the way that light works, all of those things are still nature, but they're just abiotic. And so it's really important, I think, to get more abiotic stuff into nature journaling. The stars, for example, some people have been nature journaling the stars and the solstice and things like that, so that's cool. But for the most part, I would say the nature journaling, if you look online, is probably over 90% biotic and less than 10% abiotic. And hopefully we can change that. Geology is a great place to start, and this virtual field trip with Ryan Pedersen was a good example of how to do that. It is a good place to also practice your diagrams. So if you saw yesterday, I talked about the doodling diagrams workshop with Amy. That was an amazing, where is it? That was an amazing workshop, this doodle diagram workshop with Amy. A lot of this really applies to geology. In geology, the diagrams are super useful. Right here, you can see a diagram showing how alluvial fans spread out. Here, there's more diagrams combined with landscapitos. Landscapitos make a lot of sense in geology because you're looking at landscapes, and landscapes are made up principally of abiotic factors with biotic stuff kind of just growing on the surface. So right here, you can see that there's several different rock formations, geologic formations in this outcrop back here. There are some bushes growing in the foreground. This is in Death Valley, of course, but the abiotic stuff is really what's setting the stage. And if you understand the geology, you can understand the plants. Ooh, yeah, Heather Krellin is pointing out clouds. And I should mention that Heather has done a ton of sky journaling and cloud journaling, which are abiotic. And I think that is really important. And one of the things that Heather mentions is that the sky is a part of nature that is accessible to pretty much everybody. Almost no matter where you live, you can look out and see some of the sky. So I'm really grateful that Heather pointed that out there. Those are all great examples of abiotic things that can be nature journaled. So I think this was about as much as I got done in his class. I did a little bit of this sketch here showing there's these stones, this mysterious stones that move by themselves in Death Valley. So I did this quick sketch from his painting of that, and then right after that was pencil miles. And I only have a few notes from that session. It started right after the geology of Death Valley, so there wasn't even a snack break, but went straight to that, and there was a cool conversation about diversity and inclusion. Ivea is the one that leads the pencil miles. There's sort of like a informal conversational setting, so that was very fun. And then and interesting. I don't know if fun is necessarily the right word, but this is a conversation that is really important and that we need to push forwards more in the nature journaling conversation. The next class that I was able to do was pretty much right. I don't think I even had time to eat lunch. This class was 15 minutes after pencil miles ended, and it was water-soluble pens with Matthias. And this is a really cool class. I used to work a lot more with these water-soluble pens. You can see here how even on this drawing of the pen itself, I used the ink from the pen as my line work. So normally with a pen you do line work, so it's either black or it's white. However, with water-soluble pens, you can also create a wash, which allows you to have more of a gradient of color. So see how that immediately dissolved, and it allows me to create these sort of more nuanced shades as opposed to that, which is just black or white. And that was a really fun class. I hadn't worked with these water-soluble pens in a long time. In fact, I had to go out and buy some for the class, but the cool thing is that there's a lot of water-soluble pens, even at gas stations, but usually they're not advertised as such, so you have to test them and figure out which ones they are. And on that note, Matthias had done so much testing. He was really scientific about it and had done a ton of experiments on different pens and the way that they bled. Here is an example of one of the tests that he does with different types of water-soluble ink pens. Here are some examples of the pages that I did, or just some of the sketching that I did during that class. You can see that you can end up getting a combination of these sort of graded, these gradations, like a watercolor wash and straight lines. And you can also go back and potentially add lines again on top of those softer washes. So you get the benefits of a wash and you get the benefits of line with only having two tools. If I could only have two nature journal tools and no color, I would just carry these two things and a small sketchbook, a water-soluble pen and a water brush. You can do so much with these. Here's some orchids that I drew. And then I must admit, I had to skip the watercolor, I think it was then that oh no, actually, wait, was that? Yeah, I think I skipped the watercolor class with Roseanne, and I'll have to watch that one from a video because I had to eat lunch and take a nap so that I would be able to keep going. But then afterwards, it was my turn to co-teach a class with Brian and Kim McNett. This one was about building community. Brian basically facilitated the whole thing, and Kim and I just sort of shared our own experiences. One of the things that was interesting that he mentioned is that there's about 100 nature journal clubs in the entire world. 15 of those are in California, and Europe has only 7 right now. We didn't get that much into talking about the language barrier. I think part of this might be a sampling bias because since a lot of the nature journal clubs are in English and a lot of the content is in English, it might be a little bit hard to know or for the idea of nature journaling per se to be noticed in other parts of the world, even though people might be doing similar things. So that was a great conversation. And then shortly after that, I think there was another social hour that I missed because I ate dinner. And then it was time for the keynote. So Fiona started the keynote off and shared some about the mentorship that she has received from John Muir Laws. He talked about how our experiences, our learning, and our impacts, like the beneficial impacts we can have, are all stronger when we're in community. He then went on to kind of describe a little bit about ecological communities as well as communities of people. So he talked about the difference between ecosystems, communities, and habitats, and how we can incorporate these and look for relationships in our nature journal. I see that Sandra is here. I think she's talking about the water-soluble pen. Oh, and Heather is sharing one that she likes, which is the Elegant Writer. I'll put that up there in case anyone wants to look for that pen. It also was interesting that Jack mentioned that putting yourself in the picture is important because when you're out nature journaling, you are there too. You are part of that ecosystem. Here was a funny example he gave of these mistletoe seeds and why were they on the tips of these dead sticks when the mistletoe plants were down here. How did they get there? It turns out he thinks this bird, the phainopepla, is pooping out the mistletoe seeds on the top of the branch. This is something I need to practice more. Jack is really good at it and some other people are really good at it. I think I need to practice it a lot more, but doing these three-dimensional sort of maps or three-dimensional cross-section models of ecosystems. So I tried, kind of just drawing along as he was talking about that and asking some questions as well. Then he went into a more of a philosophical thing about how our community really has an opportunity over the next year to sort of define how we're going to move forward as a movement and what our sort of morals and principles are going to be. And this is this place where it's like sometimes Jack is so amazing and so generous and so heartfelt and so noble. Sometimes I almost feel like, gosh, how, I can't compare myself to him, And so I feel really lucky that we have him as sort of this like guiding light for our community. And, he talked about like how we need to focus on service and stewardship and generosity. And he talked about like these trash pickups that Eve started and on her birthday and how all these other people are starting to do those on their birthdays too. So it's just, I bet a lot of people cried at the end of the keynote and Jack was starting to cry. So I just think he's such an amazing person. So if any of you have ever had the experience where you might be like comparing yourself to him and thinking like, gosh, I'm not at that level. Just so you know, like I've had that experience too. So we can aspire to that and we can be grateful and lucky that Jack is that way. And if you can't make it up to that level, that is fine too. Just want to say, then some of the rest of the stuff he said is just how right now we have the opportunity to open up this dialogue to see and be intentional about how we want this nature journaling community to be. And so I think that is something that he can't do by himself. It's up to all of us because we all have different perspectives, and we all have different communities that we're connected to. So as we move forward, like, what are the blind spots in the nature journaling community? How can we actually make this something that is accessible to everybody? Because, you know, like, one of the things that came up in the diversity and inclusion conversation in Pencil Miles today is that this is what feels like such a welcoming community, and everyone talks about how welcoming and kind we are. But if you look at the demographics, it's not a very diverse community yet. So what is happening that is causing that? Like, why is this not accessible to more people? There is something going on there that we should address and figure out, and hopefully we can work in that direction. So that was the keynote. I definitely took fewer pages of notes today, but as you can see, I started this journal on the first day of the Nature Journal Conference, and I think it has 90 pages, and I'm already like halfway through, so I might actually fill up this nature journal during the conference, which would be a first for me. And one thing I want to point out is that these are sketch notes, and I'm using up the space and keeping it really big. So for me, that's kind of nice during a conference to have the big paper, because it feels like I have enough space. But that might be something where everyone is going to be coming at that in a different way. Like, it might, for some people, having a smaller one might actually work better. But for me, this big page, it allows me to get my thoughts out, and I think it allows me to keep it more legible. See how much space I'm using on this page? If I were squeezing the information in smaller, it would just be a little bit harder to see and organize the information. So I'm enjoying that right now, even if it means I'm going to fill up this journal. And these Stillman and Byrne journals are kind of pricey, but I'm okay with that. I think it's worth it. So I'm just going to check in on the comments over here. Thanks to everyone who's joining in. Thank you, Heather, Ivea. Leslie is here. Hi, Leslie. Tiffany is here. Yay, Tiffany. Glad this is helping people out who are catching up on things. Ivea is asking how many episodes of the Nature Journal show there have been. I think a lot. I think there's over 200 videos on the channel. They're not all Nature Journal shows, but a lot of them are. So thank you all for supporting the Nature Journal show. I'm trying to just at least do a little bit of recap at the end of the day. It's been basically a 12-hour day of nature journaling with a few breaks in between. Oh yeah, Andrew is here. Oh, Dawn is here too. Hi, Dawn. Good to see you. All right, everybody. Now remember that your brain needs rest time too, so you can go and rest. And just one last thing I'm going to leave you with is one thing I like to do is right before going to sleep, I like to either review my journal pages. It's even if you don't like read the whole thing, just kind of flip through them. Think a little bit about the meta stuff. So like, what did I do? What was successful? What wasn't successful? Oh yeah, those purple pins are not really necessary because this page has no purple and it worked out great. Like, oh yeah, that turtleback concept from the geology class, that's something I want to remember. Either review your notes right before going to sleep, and don't make it like a lot of pressure or very hard. You could just flip through, or have an artist who you're inspired by or whose techniques you want to emulate. It could be like a sketch noter, or it could be someone in a completely different discipline, and just flip through some of their art right before going to sleep. So this is a library book that I need to return by now. It's overdue, but this is Yvonne Billybean, and he's actually a illustrator of fairy tales, but look at the way he does these trees and landscapes. So sometimes what I do is right before going to sleep, I try to do this every night, is I flip through art books or nature journal pages or whatever, but it has to be a book. It can't be on a screen, because looking on a screen right before going to sleep or on social media is not a good thing. But just look through stuff like this and think, even though this is about fairy tales, how could I emulate these ways that he draws these trees? And I think even just by looking at these things, and not actually over analyzing it right before going to sleep can be really beneficial. You can just get a stack of them from the library, artists that you like, and just just give yourself a little bit of stuff for your subconscious to be processing while you are sleeping. Ooh, Heather is asking a great question. Changes in my approach tomorrow. I don't think I have any. I'm really excited for tomorrow. There's a whole bunch of really good classes that I'm looking forward to and an amazing keynote. So I'm just going to try to do as much as I can to just support myself, like my energy and my just sort of overall like attention. So I'll try to make sure I get like a good breakfast at a certain point, and that I have like easy to eat food, that I stay hydrated and things like that. Great question, Heather. But I think I'm gonna stay with the tools I'm using. I'm kind of going back and forth between the Sailor Fude Demanin and this Pilot Fudayaku pin, the one that has the gray and the black. I'm sort of going back and forth between those as my main tool, and then also using these gel pins to sort of highlight some stuff. Using this Tombow pin for my main titles has been okay, but I think I might use that a little bit less tomorrow. All right, everybody, thank you for joining in. If you couldn't make it to Wild Wonder this year, check out my other videos where I do a recap every day. It's definitely worth it. If you are making it to Wild Wonder, go easy on yourself. You have the opportunity to watch the recordings later. Thank you again for joining in tonight, and have a good rest. All right, bye.